We were holding in the middle of chapter Chavav 26, and that is just about a third into the chapter, or about a quarter into the chapter. We're holding in the second half of this very chapter. So we're holding in where it says V'hinei eitza ha'ye'utza l'tahir libei mikol etzev v'nidnud daige memila de'alma. This is from the very few chapters, by the way, which are formally divided. Most of the chapters in Tanya are come as one. There's no interruption, or it's non-divided. There are no paragraphs. There's very few, and this is famously known. One of them, for the reasons the Alter Rebbe had, a few of them is mentioned in a number of places. Why particularly by these chapters the Alter Rebbe divided it? But in any case, we're holding by the second half, V'hinei. Just to note again, find this class and the previous classes on koshertube.com with the text on tanyaonline.com, which sometimes it's easy to follow. So we're going to start over here. The Alter Rebbe dealt with last week, where the Alter Rebbe mentions the importance, the essentiality of one serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitoch simcha, precisely through joy, not as an additional layer in his avodah, in his service, additional flavor, but this has to be part and parcel of his service to God, just for the reason that is virtually crucial for him, or essential for him, a necessity. It's a necessity. It's virtually a necessity to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy and gladness of heart, and precisely an upbeat spirit, just in order to be able to win over the Yetzer Hara. It's not like sometimes a tam kamos hidden reason, certainly predicated on the psukim, midus Hashem b'simcha, serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'simcha, but there's not just like something which is a reason, a hidden reason for it. This is simply to be able to be victorious over the Yetzer Hara, which comes in so many different, as we all know it, and comes in so many different ways, presents itself with so many different challenges, avenues that challenge us, to say that. There's so many different avenues, tricky avenues sometimes, which challenge us in our service to God, on the two sides, on the two dimensions of Sur Meira and Asay Taiv, tries to persuade us to violate HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mitzvahs in the way that Hashem said not to do, we ought to stay away from. And again, this is in action, in speech, and in thought, which again it could be challenging. The Alter Rebbe says, and despite the challenges, the previous chapters, that we have 100% control. We have the ability to be 100% on top of every action, even speech, and more so even of every thought. Again, as explained and elaborated in the previous chapters. And then, in the perspective of Seitiv, of doing good, meaning to say we have a whole set of the do's we have to do, and the Yetzer Hara again tells us to be laid back, not to be so passionate of the mitzvahs, and we follow again, but ma'aseh, dibur machshav, and action and speech and in thought as well, which we know many mitzvahs are associated with thought, concentration, kavanah, proper intent, etc. So and in order to be victorious over the Yetzer, in other words, in order to triumph in our battle and be successful in our overall mandate in making this world an abode for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, via the Torah and mitzvahs, one must, it's a necessity, it's necessary for the person to be successful, to be stand with joy and elation, and precisely an upbeat spirit. That was again the previous, basically encapsulating the previous class. We did allude to this part of the Tanya, this chapter and the following two chapters, where we ask the question that the person doesn't bring upon himself, choose to bring upon himself a state of down-spirited state, or down-spirited approach to life, or to be, down, sad, melancholy. We don't choose it. Unfortunately, there can be problems which come to a person as he journeys along this life, the journey of life, the odyssey of life. He can come into encounters. Unfortunately, shall we not be challenged? But unfortunately, on this road, there is, like the Gemara says, called drachim becheskes sakana. Even in the context of man's journey in life, man is vulnerable to, or can. Again, we would like to talk about this hypothetically, and we ask Hashem that everything, all His blessings, should shower upon every yid, every person, in order to be able to with ease appreciate God's blessings and continue with enormous vigor, animated vigor, to implement His mandate, His shlichut, in this very world. But theoretically, it can be different. The person can be challenged with physical challenges, and then a whole set of spiritual challenges. A kosher yid which stands focused and understands what his mandate, his mission, he could be tremendously challenged. Firstly, he could be tremendously pained, rather, to the extent that his spirit could be affected when he's challenged even with spiritual challenges. May it be the actual challenges themselves, or once a person realizes if chas v'shalom he violated, how painful it can be. The notion, especially we know what is sin, what stands behind a sin. So these are so the Alter Rebbe, and these is not, the Alter Rebbe is not oblivious of this. Alter Rebbe is not oblivious, indifferent to these problems which one can chas v'shalom, God forbid, have, again, maybe physically or spiritually, which could bring his spirit down. So what do you, the question is, or Alter Rebbe feels that he has to identify with these problems in order to deal with them, and to suggest what we do in order that we should be able to stay, we should be able to stay in a state of simcha, v'tuv levav, joy, gladness of heart. Again, as we mentioned, how crucial it is and how essential it is, how the necessity, how much it's a simple, elemental necessity in our Avodas Hashem, simply to overcome the Yetzer Hara, simply to triumph in our milchama, or triumph in it is a war. Many times we even see how this challenge could manifest in simply war, battle between the Yid and his Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. In order, as we mentioned, this is not just another dimension of Avodas Hashem. This is crucial. This is essential. So we don't formally bring it upon ourselves, but how do we deal with it? What is the suggestion how to overcome or deal with these different problems which do or can and do bring us down, and can bring, sometimes it could bring us way down, God forbid, naturally, to a state of real melancholy and real deep down spirit. It can. So what is the suggestion to this? So here the Alter Rebbe, perhaps this is one of the reasons, the messages in the beginning of Chavav. The second part, again, this is divided. Now I want to tell you some suggestions how to deal with it, how to deal with these issues. That's why this part brings in Eitza HaYeutza. Alter Rebbe is not just relegating it, deal with it. No, I'm going to give you a suggestion, the suggestible suggestion. That's what literally translated. So this is how he begins. The suggestion, to purify, it means clean his heart. His heart should remain pure and clean and devoid of any sadness or of any worry, preoccupation. Now, Alter Rebbe first tackles the physical problems which can express themselves challenging our material lives and necessities, which usually we want to encapsulate what life consists of. The essential dimensions to life is bana, as we know famously said, bana chayo mezena, which is children and life, and mezena is parnasa, which means healthy children, and life, literally gesund, to be healthy, health rather. And mezena is one's well-being, one's parnasa, livelihood. So these are the overall three areas which defines a good life, or chas v'shalom, a fractured life. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. So the Alter Rebbe says over here that even in Boneh Chayu Mezena, needless to mention, for our audience, a bracha was naturally made before, but we go on. Fila Boneh Chayu Mezena, that even when it comes to these three important, or not only important elements to life, these three dimensions which make up life, and when, God forbid, one is challenged with it, and consequently, and so naturally, it could affect this important dimension in Avodas Hashem, which is simcha, his joy and his elation and uplifted spirit, it, God forbid, can have an effect. So what do we do about it? Mudazais, the suggestion is, based on this, what it's known, lakoil to all, Maimed Azal, the saying of our sages of blessed memory, kishem shemevarech ala teva, kach mevarech ala ra, kach mevarech chulu. Interesting, Al Rebbe doesn't want to go on and say the word ra. Over here, he just says, the famous Mishnah, that a person has to bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the good, just like he blessed HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the negative experiences, just like he blesses HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the good, or to be more precise in the expression of the Mishnah, just like a person blesses HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the good, so too he ought to bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu on any negative experience. And the Gemara, this is a Mishnah, Pirush should be Gemara, and the Gemara explains, L'kabuli b'simcha, to receive this experience with joy, Kimai simchas hateva haniglis v'nidis, just like the joy of good, of overt and manifest good, which is revealed and apparent. In the same way, he ought to accept with joy these negative experiences. Naturally, easier said than done, but the Alter Rebbe adds, Ki gam zula teva, because this is also for the good, and not only is it also for the good, the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us that in essence, what defines good, by the definition of good, is that it's truly, essentially good. For example, someone runs to a train, and to him good is if he catches the train. And God forbid if the train is in an accident, again, God forbid, this expression of good, or this feeling that this experience was defined as good, is completely reversed. It could be the most devastating experience, the fact that he caught the train on time. In other words, what ultimately defines good is if it's essentially, if it's virtually good. That's the true definition of tov. So once we know that, and we know that this experience is also coming from the same place, from the tov amiti, the true good, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the expression etzem hatev lahetiv he's essentially tev, and his tev is lahetiv, to do good, then we can understand that for the true reason, the genuine reason, or the reason to genuinely express simcha, joy, because of a positive experience, that I could make out the positivity of this experience, I will bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because I feel that this is coming from a good makar, a good source, a source of tov. Once I know that it's about absolute goodness, in other words, not a relative or a conditional goodness, a circumstantial goodness. This is essentially a true absolute goodness, and therefore when I experience something negative, if I know it's coming from the same source, I have to conceptually and try to make that real in order to, in other words, this notion which we just mentioned, Higam Zula Teva, resonates with me, that I am able to accept and deal with the negative experience with the same genuine joy, like I accept, like I praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like I bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu when the good is apparent to me and revealed and overt, or good the way it comes, the way I see the good, in the same exact fashion. Just to pause perhaps and just see interesting this expression Gamzu L'Teva. We know it. It's the same famous saying in the Gemara that there was an individual which was called Nachum Ish Gamzu. They used to call him Nachum Ish Gamzu because in everything he used to say Gamzu L'Teva. And the famous story which is mentioned about Nachum Ish Gamzu, that which demonstrates this point very clear, that in the end of the day it's about where it's coming from. It's about the absolute good, the relative good, or the conditional good, or the circumstantial, or the good which just on the surface as the external veneer which presents itself in the package of taiv, of goodness, is not necessarily the ultimate taiv. Sometimes, as we just mentioned, gave an example, could be the opposite. It's about something which is essentially taiv, something which is essentially good. So because it's essentially good, sooner or later we would have to see how this, in other words, it's not dependent, put it this way, it's not dependent of how much we see, it's not dependent of how much we can experience, on how much we experience this type. It all depends if it's truly and truly virtually taiv, if it's truly good. But yet, because it ultimately comes from a place which is taiv, many times we see it manifest, this taiv manifest. And sometimes once we see this taiv manifest, we see how it is, we see the bigger picture, and we say, now I understand why that didn't work out, or that didn't work out. Or for example, in the example we just gave, it was devastating to miss that train, and I had to cancel this meeting and that meeting, but whoa, was I saved. I was saved. I would have been in that particular car. Again, we're talking about a hypothetical example. Again, nothing should ever be. Everything should be only betov hanira v'nigla, and good and apparent good, good which is apparent and a good which stands in a manifest type, a manifest good. But again, just to use it as an example. So we know the story. With Nachum Ish Gamzu, you can welcome to see the details in the Gemara, but this was a classic example that he was represented by the community. There was a decree, an edict on the community, a negative decree on the Jewish community, and they sent him with a whole chest full of gold and silver and diamonds and jewelry and so on to try to appease the king. And he went and he stopped up in the inn, and thieves came and stole it from him, and for him not to realize, they filled it up with earth. And he went on so innocently on his way. When he came to the king, before he knew it, he was grabbed and put into, he was incarcerated. Needless to mention, they opened it up and they felt he's mocking, the Jewish community is mocking the monarch and the kingdom, the malchus, the authority of starting with the melech himself, with the king himself. In any case, and before even he realized, he was just taken away. Before he realized what happened, he was taken away, and after a short while, he was taken out of prison and thanked and honored and sent back. As the story goes, the king immediately annulled that decree and sent him back with honor and glory, and sent him with, I believe, with additional presents and so on and so forth. And what transpired, what happened was that there was an individual, one of the ministers of the king, suggested to the king that it doesn't make sense that these innocent Jews, or these genuinely innocent Jews, should just send you a chest full of earth. There's something to it. And what happened? And when he went on explaining, he says their ancestor Avraham Avinu, when he fought his wars, he used special earth in order to conquer the enemy, because the earth turned into arrows, and that's the way Avraham Avinu won. And happened to be, as the Gemara said, this king was fighting a few wars at the time, and he used that earth, and that's exactly the way it was. The earth became arrows, and he won his wars. And he continued to win his wars, and he saw of this enormous gift, or rather, he was able to value and appreciate this enormous gift, which was sent by the Jewish community, so to speak, right? Via Rav Nachum Ish Gamzu. So this is one of the. So eventually, was it L'Teva? Sure, it was L'Teva. Gamzu L'Teva. And again, there's many incidents which Nachum Ish Gamzu used to. He was called Ish Gamzu because in every incident he said Gamzu L'Teva. It was also for the good. I don't see the good. What's the connection if I see the good or not? If it's taiv, it's taiv. If it's good, it's good. If it's essentially good, essentially good. So I didn't see it now, I'll see it in 5 minutes. Or now if I didn't see it in 5 minutes, I'll see it in 5 hours. And if it takes 5 years to see it, it doesn't change the reality, how much it'll take to unfold till I see the good. It doesn't change the reality, what it truly is, what its definition is. And that was the approach Nachum Ish Gamzu took in every avenue, in every area in life. He always used to say Gamzu L'Teva. In this case, the Gemara shows us that eventually it unfolded. And interesting, as the commentators explain this Gemara, there wasn't that he was also, in other words, if you bring the jewelry, he would also be, the king would appease the community, be appeased in order to annul the decree. And the HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrated it. Now it wasn't jewelry, it was another type of gift. The Gemara explains over here that who knows if through the jewelry, or the commentators explain, who knows if the jewelry, believes the Gemara itself indicates this, even who knows if the jewelry would appease the king. The king needs a few little pieces of jewelry, or many pieces of jewelry from a Jewish community. A king has full of storage. There's treasures and treasures of gold and silver. Who knows if this would touch him? Obviously, he would appreciate to some degree that they're trying to make an effort to appease him, but who knows if he would drop the decree based on a few, with a chest of gold and silver for a king which is has so much of gold and silver. It was precisely because they took it from him that night, when he stayed over again, when he slept over in the inn that night, is because they took it from him, because the devastating incident on the surface, it seemed devastating because of that, and because they put earth, and certainly HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervened, and he truly allowed this earth to be that special weapon which brought victory to the king. But it is only because of that the king annulled the decree. Not necessarily, if things would have gone regular, would the king annul the decree. So this is the expression here, like Gamzu L'Teva. And when we understand it and we try to bring this information, absorb this information, penetrate and contemplate and meditate on this information enough, we can appreciate in other words, we'll be able to actualize, we'll be able to live this Mishnah. It's certainly easier said than practiced, but it's about meditating on this notion, which gives us the ability to experience, it gives us the ability to have this birchas hatev, in other words, bless God on anything, any experience, truly, authentically, and genuinely, if we understand and we put things in perspective. Comes the Alter Rebbe now and says even more than that. The Gamzu L'Teva, or the emphasis of the Alter Rebbe, is that not only it's coming basically from the same place, this is coming from such a taiv. This is taiv, rather, this is essentially good, and that's essentially good. So they're coming from the same place, and therefore appreciate it, accept it, and rejoice with it in the same exact fashion. So the Rebbe emphasizes over here, it's much more than that. That the good which comes from, the good which is rather the apparent good, comes from a lower level, an inferior level, from inferior level of, let's try to use, I don't want to say, to stick to the words, it comes from an inferior level than the good which does not express itself overtly. It's a covert good. A good which is not apparent comes from a deeper level within God than the good which is nigla, which is apparent and which is overt good. experiences a overt a positive experience. So the Alter Rebbe adds over here again. So again, not only it's coming from the same place, hence I ought to rejoice, but more than that, the teiv, because the teiv, which does not manifest, it doesn't manifest itself in an apparent overt manner, comes from a deeper place from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So hence, I am connected to a deeper level of teiv. When I say deeper, when we say over here deeper level of teiv, because based on what we just said before, the true teiv is HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is etzem ha-teiv lahetiv. And that's again true absolute terms. Any absolute terms is ultimately attributed to one who is absolute, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. True teiv, true good, is associated with the Eibishter HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Hence, when I know that I'm receiving a deeper, with an energy, and a hashpah, I'm receiving from the more deeper dimensions within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the tachlis ha-teiv, is the ultimate absolute teiv, good. So I know that the teiv, that tells me rather, that the teiv, the good that I'm experiencing, is even a better and more profound level of teiv, of good, even more than the good that I can see and that I could touch with my hands and that I can experience. Because this teiv comes from a deeper level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the true teiv, tachlis ha-teiv, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the Eibishter, is Hashem. So when I know that I'm receiving from a deeper part of Hashem, so ultimately it's not just, it's tantamount, this teiv is tantamount to that teiv, hence I should remain b'simcha, with joy and gladness of heart, again, in the context of not interfering with my avodas Hashem. Much more than that, because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the ultimate teiv, and this teiv is something which I cannot, it's not something which I can see or understand what the good of all this is. And the Alter Rebbe is going to explain us again with different proofs and different Maimori Chazal that this is ultimately coming from a deeper level within HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's coming from a deeper level in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm connecting myself to even a deeper teiv within, even to a deeper rather dimension of teiv of good. So if I'm connecting, I'm experiencing a deeper dimension of teiv, so for sure I should stand with simcha v'tuv levav. I should be able to stand with an uplifted spirit and joy and elation, again, even more than the teiv which is nidav and nigla, teiv which is apparent and revealed. And it's similar to, let's try to understand it, if someone defines teiv, good, in the context of, let's say, from the monetary perspective. So if I'm happy when someone gives me $1 million and someone gives me $1 billion, for sure I'm going to be even more of a sameach. Because this is when good is defined by in monetary value. Similarly, because I know that the tachlis ha-teiv, the ultimate good, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so when I'm experiencing certain negative experiences, knowing that this is coming from a deeper level within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so ultimately it's coming from a deeper level of teiv. Hence, I should stand, not only perhaps even from a certain perspective, that I should be even more happier. I should be rather even happier when I experience these experiences even more than the experiences of Teir Vanir Vanigla, good which is apparent and good which I can see. But the Mishnah doesn't say this, so let's not add it. The Mishnah says kishem in the same way, but at least I know this information. I can identify with the Mishnah and I could experience the Mishnah in a way that makes sense to me, to my conscious mind, and filters my entire reality, understanding, and putting this accurate perspective to life, and understanding that ultimately everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when I don't see on the surface, when I don't see the good, at least on the onset, I know it's coming from a deeper level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so it's coming from a deeper level of teiv. That's why, just derech agav, and Alter Rebbe alludes to this later. We're going to stop over here, but Alter Rebbe alludes to this later, that's why that you see sometimes when a person on the onset experiences negative experiences, then the teiv, when it unfolds, when the bigger picture unfolds, it is something which is it rushes through with such intensity. In other words, many times it comes, this very good or good, the way it comes from a deep level within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, jumps, in other words, goes ahead and rushes down to Olam Hazeh, to our, within our experience. In other words, that good itself comes in a way of Teiv Hanir of Anigla, in good and Avi, in apparent and obvious good. We see the blessing is not just a bit more, but way greater, way deeper, way much more, way more profound, and the way it touches us much more than when things were on the onset normal and regular. And the reason for this is because it's coming from a deeper level of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So many times it comes from a deeper level of the Kodesh Baruch Hu, like Dr. Rebbe is going to explain it. We don't see the good, but sometimes, like in this very story of Nachum Ish Gamzu, it was precisely because that incident happened, which on the surface was devastating. Then, when it ultimately unfolded, and it came down B'Teiv Hanira V'Anigla in a good and apparent manner, it was enormous that this special earth was used by Avraham Avinu, then hundreds of years, and so many hundreds of generations later, this same earth came up to the surface, which this king, again, was not recorded since in between any other time when this ever occurred. Avraham Avinu had the special earth, and precisely this king had the special earth, and that's why he was able to found within himself the reason to appease this community and annul the decree. So the blessing came in a very tremendous, stupendous manner, because ultimately it's coming from a deeper level of Kodesh Baruch Hu. So usually when it comes to a deeper level of Kodesh Baruch Hu, we cannot see the good. But sometimes, and Dr. Rebbe is going to, again, based on the Gemara, that those who understood and those who appreciated this thought and understood that this is ultimately coming from the inner dimension, deepest dimension within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, later that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took that and brought it into full, complete manifestation and revelation. And that's why, because it was within a deeper part of within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, therefore it was kind of an explosion of good. And I just conclude this class here. Shall HaKadosh Baruch Hu help that the Jewish people have an overall experienced much of this deeper dimension within HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Jewish people always understood or accepted if they were adequately joyous or not, if they put it in the accurate perspective. Many of the Jewish people over the history of a 3,300-year history did so and lived their life in this way. And we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu that all this stored good, which comes from a deeper part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is hidden, and again it's part of the hiddenness, iskasya, like he's going to explain, within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Yeshiv B'Seiser Elyon. On the contrary, the deeper dimensions of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are hidden, concealed, but that concealment with that enormous energy of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'Chvei Devatzmi, the way the Eibishter is for himself, by himself, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu that it should come into full expression and into full state of manifestation, and we should truly be able to see the explosion of good, and in the most miraculous manner possible, individually and collectively and naturally. This is in other words, with the ultimate redemption, which is a revolutionary good, which will ultimately be expressed and manifest in this very physical world. Have a wonderful Shabbos.